November 12, 2025, 3:14 a.m., Moscow, Russian Federation. Inside the subterranean, heavily fortified concrete bunkers of the Federal Security Service's Sector 7. The air is thick with the sterile hum of liquid-cooled mainframes and the scent of bitter, stale coffee. This is the cryptographic heart of the state, a ghost kingdom hidden 40 meters beneath the frozen tarmac of Lub'янska Square, where the outside world ceases to exist. For over a decade, a small, highly insular unit of elite mathematicians and codebreakers have lived in these shadows, weaving the impenetrable digital shield known as the Sovereign Cipher, the supreme encryption matrix that protects Russia's entire military satellite network, deep space communication lines, and nuclear command protocols. To the state, these men are not citizens. They are living national treasures, walking state secrets whose minds are heavily guarded property, forbidden from ever crossing the border, forbidden from even owning a personal smartphone. But tonight, the silent, monolithic obedience of Sector 7 has been shattered from within by its most brilliant and broken architect. A man who has spent 3 years quietly mapping the structural flaws of his own creation. Dr. Lev Antonov sits motionless before a towering array of monitors. The pale, flickering blue light of a terminal cascading across his hollow cheeks and bloodshot, unblinking eyes. His hands, trembling slightly from adrenaline and sheer exhaustion, hover over a mechanical keyboard as lines of complex, self-replicating code cascade down the screen in a silent, blinding waterfall. Antonov knows that what he is doing is a death sentence, an act of absolute treason that will instantly activate every counterintelligence tripwire from Moscow to Vladivostok. Yet his resolve remains cold and absolute. Over the past 12 months, as the geopolitical landscape darkened, he watched his cryptographic algorithms being weaponized to blinding effect, blinding foreign infrastructure and turning global communication grids into potential battlefields. He realized that the Sovereign Cipher was no longer a shield, but the ultimate vanguard for an impending global catastrophe. And the only way to stop the countdown was to destroy the Matrix by delivering its master decryption keys to the outside world. With a final, heavy keystroke, Antonov executes the extraction protocol, transferring 300 terabytes of raw, unencrypted master data into an ordinary-looking, military-grade solid-state drive concealed inside his heavy winter coat. The heavy steel door of the terminal room suddenly hisses, its hydraulic locks groaning as the crimson warning lights along the corridor begin to pulse in a rhythmic, terrifying flash. The internal security algorithms have detected the massive data anomaly, and Antonov has less than 4 minutes before the entire facility goes into total lockdown, sealing him inside a concrete tomb forever. Grabbing his heavy charcoal overcoat and slipping the drive into a hidden inner pocket next to a forged passport, he moves with a desperate, practiced calmness toward the auxiliary service elevator used by the night shift maintenance crews. His heart hammers violently against his ribs as he steps into the elevator car, the metallic rattle of the cables echoing in the shaft like a ticking clock while the elevator ascends toward the rain-slicked surface of the Capitol. Emerging into a side alley behind a decaying Stay-Tone printing press, the freezing Moscow rain hits his face. Instantly mixing with the cold sweat bead on his forehead, he disappears into the neon-lit, wet gloom of the pre-dawn streets. He does not look back, knowing that the machinery of the state is already awakening, and that by sunrise, his face will be burned into the memory of every border agent and operative across Eurasia. By 6 a.m., the cold, silent machine of retribution is fully operational inside the central command post of the FSB's 7th Directorate. General Mihайло Воронін, a legendary counterespionage operative whose 30-year career is written in the disappearances of defectors and traitors, stands before a massive digital map of Europe, his gray eyes completely devoid of warmth. Voronin does not scream, nor does he show anger. To him, Antonov's defection is merely a structural anomaly that must be excised with absolute, surgical finality before the data can reach Western intelligence hands. Reports are already flooding his terminal. Antonov's apartment has been raided and ransacked, his bank accounts frozen, and his known associates detained for aggressive interrogation. Yet the man himself has vanished into thin air. Voronin tracks the timeline with a predatory precision, realizing that Antonov did not flee blindly, but had spent months laying a ghost trail through the criminal underbelly of the black market transport networks. A biometric hit flashes on a terminal in the corner. A forged passport matching Antonov's height and facial structure was scanned 40 minutes ago at a miner. Secondary rail checkpoint heading south toward the Caucasus. The hunt is now a race against time and distance, spanning across vast, gray expanses of industrial borderlands and rain-drenched transit hubs where human life is cheap and easily bought. Antonov moves like a ghost through the shifting shadows of long-distance buses and crowded regional trains, sleeping only in short, fitful bursts with his hand clamped tightly around the drive inside his pocket. Every shadow looks like an assassin. Every sudden movement of a fellow passenger causes his chest to tighten with suffocating panic, his mind constantly replaying the brutal methods of the 7th Directorate. He knows that Voronin's operatives do not capture. They eliminate the threat and recover the asset, leaving no trace behind but an unexplained cardiac arrest or a sudden, fatal fall from a concrete balcony. As the train rattles through the endless, bleak fields of southern Russia, Antonov stares at his own reflection in the dirt-streaked window, wondering if he will live long enough to see the ancient, crowded streets of his final destination, or if he is already a walking corpse. November 15, 2025, 11:42 p.m., Istanbul, Turkey. The ancient, suffocating dampness of the Karaki district hangs heavily over the dark waters of the Bosporus, where the silhouettes of massive cargo ships glide like silent leviathans through the thick midnight fog. Lev Antonov stands deep within the crumbling, salty roaded archway of an abandoned Byzantine warehouse, his hands buried deep inside the pockets of his wet charcoal coat, his body shivering from a toxic mix of hypothermia and raw terror. He has successfully crossed 3 international borders using a shifting network of human smugglers. Hiding in the dark, diesel-fumed holds of Black Sea freighters. Yet he feels more exposed here than he did in the heart of Moscow. The city is a chaotic, echoing labyrinth of minarets, neon signs, and crowded alleys, but to Antonov, every footsteps echoing on the wet cobblestones sounds like the approach of his executioner. He looks down at his worn digital watch, its amber backlight illuminating the screen. As the seconds tick down toward midnight, the exact time he is scheduled to meet a low-level Western intelligence contact who promised him safe passage to a safe house in Vienna. Suddenly, the ambient sounds of the harbor, the distant gulls, the lapping waves, the low groan of ship horns are swallowed by an oppressive, terrifying silence as a lone figure emerges from the dense fog at the end of the pier. The man steps under the flickering, yellow glare of a dying street lamp, revealing the heavy, rigid silhouette of a black trench coat and the unmistakable, calculating gaze of General Mikhail Voronin. Antonov's breath catches in his throat, a suffocating wave of panic paralyzing his limbs as he realizes that his ghost trail had been compromised weeks before he even left the bunker of Sector 7. Voronin does not draw a weapon. He simply stands there, his leather-gloved hands folded behind his back, his cold steel-gray eyes locked onto Antonov with the patient, unblinking focus of a predator that has already cornered its prey. The general takes a single, deliberate step forward, the heavy click of his tactical boot against the stone echoing like a gunshot through the empty warehouse district, signaling that the illusion of safety has officially vanished. Instinct takes over where reason fails, and Antonov bolts blindly into the pitch-black maze of the Karaki backstreets, his boots slipping on the slick, garbage-strewn cobblestones as adrenaline surges through his veins. Behind him, the hunt is entirely silent. There are no shouting voices, no frantic sirens, only the rhythmic, terrifyingly steady sound of heavy footsteps tracking him through the dark with mechanical precision. Voronin's local sleeper cells, embedded deep within the maritime underground of Istanbul, move through the parallel alleys like a pack of wolves, cutting off his escape routes and driving him toward the crowded, chaotic markets of the old city. Antonov throws himself through the heavy canvas curtains of a late-night spice market, knocking over crates of saffron and dried peppers as he desperately tries to lose his pursuers in the thick, pungent air and shifting crowds. He bursts out the other side into a brightly lit square, his eyes darting wildly until they lock onto the neon sign of an international bus terminal, his last desperate gamble to escape the tightening noose. November 17, 2025, for 19 a.m., Belgrade, Serbia. The rain in Belgrade is different. It is a cold, gray, relentless sheet that washes over the brutalist concrete apartment blocks of New Belgrade, turning the city into a monochromatic canvas of industrial despair. Antonov sits in the absolute darkness of a derelict, third-floor safe-house apartment, the peeling wallpaper and bare concrete floors smelling of damp earth and old tobacco. He managed to board a midnight transport out of Turkey, crossing Bulgaria under a pile of industrial timber. But the drive in his pocket now feels like a block of burning white phosphorus, radiating a danger that grows more intense with every passing hour. His contact in Istanbul never arrived, and Antonov realizes with sickening clarity that he is entirely alone, caught in the crossfire of a silent shadow war where both sides view him as an asset to be secured or a liability to be erased. He hooks the solid-state drive to a battered, air-gapped laptop, watching the complex cryptographic strings of the sovereign cipher pulse across the screen. $1 trillion worth of state secrets sitting on a cheap wooden table outside. The wet asphalt of the deserted street reflects the sudden, sharp headlights of two unmarked black sedans arriving with completely extinguished running lights. From the window, Antonov watches in paralyzed horror as four men in identical dark coats step out into the rain, their movements perfectly synchronized, their faces hidden beneath the brims of tactical caps. Among them, the tall, imposing figure of General Voronін stands completely motionless under the downpour, his eyes raised toward the third-floor window as if he can see through the cracked glass and into Antonov's decaying soul. The local security network had betrayed him again. His digital signature traced the exact second his laptop connected to the drive, and now the perimeter is completely sealed. The sound of the apartment building's heavy iron front door being forced open echoes up the stairwell, followed by the soft, rapid scuff of tactical boots ascending the concrete steps. Antonov does not run this time. There is nowhere left to go, no more borders to cross, no more shadows deep enough to hide a man marked for liquidation by the 7th Directorate. He sweeps the battered laptop and the solid-state drive into his arms, scrambling up a rusted iron ladder that leads through a narrow maintenance hatch onto the rain-slicked roof of the brutalist apartment block. The freezing wind strikes him like a physical blow. Threatening to rip the coat from his back, he stumbles across the uneven gravel surface, his breath coming in ragged, painful gasps that freeze instantly in the air. Below him, the sprawling concrete maze of New Belgrade stretches out into the gray dawn, a vast, indifferent ocean of industrial monoliths and empty avenues that offers no sanctuary. Behind him, the heavy iron hatch is violently thrown open, slamming against the roof with a deafening metallic clang that cuts through the roar of the storm. And Voronін steps out into the rain. The general walks forward slowly, his heavy black trench coat snapping in the fierce wind, his hands remaining steady and loose at his sides, as if he were taking a morning stroll through Red Square rather than cornering a trader on a foreign roof. 10 feet away, Antonov stops, his heels hovering dangerously over the sheer drop of the building's unguarded edge. The drive clutched against his chest like a shield, his eyes wide with a manic, desperate defiance. Voronін stops, looking down at the drive, and then into Antonov's eyes, his expression remaining entirely unreadable, a stone mask carved by decades of cold state service. For the first time in the entire hunt, the silence between the two men is absolute, filled only by the rhythmic drumming of the rain on the concrete and the distant, low rumble of the awakening city below. Voronін gently extends his right hand, a silent, non-negotiable demand for the return of the sovereign cipher, offering no promises of mercy. Only the cold certainty of an ending. Antonov looks down at the drive, then looks up at the gray sky, a sudden, terrifying smile breaking across his exhausted, hollow face as he realizes the ultimate irony of his position. He knows that if he hands over the drive, the state will lock him in a dark cell and erase his name from history. If he drops it, the secrets die with him, but the weapon he feared remains unbroken in the bunkers of Moscow. With a final, violent motion, Antonov does not surrender the drive to Voronін, nor does he throw it into the abyss instead. He smashes the fragile solid-state device down onto a rusted iron lightning rod projecting from the roof, shattering the internal silicon chips into 1,000 useless fragments. Voronín's eyes do not widen, his posture does not change, but a cold, heavy silence settles over the roof as the rain instantly washes the ruined fragments of the sovereign cipher into the gutters. The data is gone, the hunt is over, and as the first pale light of dawn breaks through the Belgrade clouds, the shadows of Sector 7 finally reclaim their missing piece.